Today, we're digging into some really practical insights, focusing on a role that's just so crucial. The partner supporting someone through the incredible journey of labor and delivery.
It really is one of those defining moments, isn't it? And what we're looking at suggests that for the support person, having a clear idea of what's coming and how to help. It's not just about feeling ready. It can actually genuinely impact the whole experience.
Yeah.
So the goal here is kind of turning this potentially overwhelming pile of details into clear, usable knowledge.
Absolutely. And, right off the bat, something that really jumps out is that this role, it's way more than just being physically present in the room.
Mm-hmm.
There's research connecting that active partner support to really positive outcomes. Things like potentially shorter labor times and maybe even less need for medical interventions.
That's fascinating, right? It just highlights how powerful that active presence can be. Because when someone's in labor, their partner is often, the main source of comfort, of strength, that constant in the room. And yes, it can be really, really hard seeing someone you love in pain. But the overall experience, it's often framed as like one of the most powerful and ultimately deeply rewarding moments you share.
So clearly a big deal then.
Yeah.
And you definitely don't want to be trying to figure all this out, on the fly while it's actually happening.
Exactly.
Which brings us to preparation. It sounds like it's key.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it like training for a big race. You wouldn't just show up without preparing first.
Right.
So what's suggested is looking over notes, doing some reading beforehand, but specifically childbirth classes. They're really highlighted as a vital step.
Childbirth classes. Okay, so what makes them so valuable based on these insights?
Well, they give you that foundational knowledge, understanding the process itself, the mechanics, the stages, what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
You also get to hear from others, understand different perspectives, and crucially, they often guide you in putting together a birth plan, which, isn't a rigid script.
Yeah.
But it's a way to talk about preferences and options before everything gets intense. And if you can't do in-person, online classes are a good option too, often with visuals and stories.
Yeah. Preparation done. Now, how do you actually know when it's, like, game time? There seems to be a clear difference made between false labor and the real thing.
Right. Most people late in pregnancy get Braxton Hicks. The description is usually a tightening, a hardening of the belly. Sometimes uncomfortable, maybe, but typically not painful like real labor contractions.
Okay.
They're irregular. They don't really get stronger or closer together.
So what are the signs that scream true labor then?
Several key things. Your water breaking is a big one. Could be a gush, could be a trickle.
Yeah.
Usually labor starts soon after or might need to be induced to prevent infection.
Right.
But interestingly, the point is made that contractions often start before the water breaks. Another sign is that persistent lower back pain, kind of crampy, like really intense premenstrual cramps. But the most telling sign, the contractions themselves. They become regular, the time between them gets shorter, and each one lasts longer and feels stronger.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and passing the mucus plug, too. It shows things are changing, but labor might still be days away. It's not an immediate signal.
Got it. So once you think it's real, timing contractions is important, but maybe not obsessively.
Yeah, time them, now and then, track the progress, but don't just stare at the clock constantly.
Right.
Obsessing can actually make labor feel longer, paradoxically. You time from the start of one to the start of the next, that's the interval, and note how long each one lasts. Using an app can be helpful for this.
Okay. And for early labor, stay home if possible.
Generally, yes. You're usually more comfortable, more relaxed at home. Hospitals typically suggest waiting until contractions are pretty regular, quite painful, maybe every 3 to 5 minutes, and the cervix is starting to dilate.
So there's a kind of rule of thumb.
Yeah, a common guideline is heading in when they're 5 minutes apart or less, lasting 30 seconds or more, and that pattern's held for about an hour. But, and this is important, always check with your healthcare provider. They can advise over the phone, and specific situations might need different timing.
And during that early bit at home, what's the partner's main job?
It's actually quite simple, but really profound. Just be available. Help your partner relax, do whatever they feel like doing. Maybe watch TV, go for a gentle walk if they're up for it, take a shower, maybe even nap between contractions.
Then what not to do.
Right. Equally important. This is definitely not the time to suddenly decide to finish that DIY project or, tackle chores.
Got it. Be present.
Be present, focused on them.
Okay, this is where it gets, really interesting understanding the different phases, not just one long haul What are the distinct stages described?
Exactly. It's usually broken down into three main stages. And that first stage, it actually has three phases within it.
Okay, let's unpack those. First stage phases.
So first is the early phase, often the longest, could be up to 12 hours, maybe shorter for baby number 2 or 3. Contractions are getting longer, stronger, but often still, manageable. Then comes the active phase. Usually lasts up to 6 hours, maybe less. This is typically when you'll head to the hospital or birth center. Contractions get much more intense here, like 40 to 60 seconds long every 3 to 5 minutes.
And this is where the partner support really kicks in.
Absolutely. Helping with breathing, relaxation techniques you might have learned. This is prime time for that. It's also often when decisions about pain relief, like getting an epidural, are made.
Okay. And the last phase of stage 1?
That's transition, often called the most challenging, most intense part. It can be relatively short, maybe minutes, maybe a couple of hours. Contractions are super powerful, lasting 60 to 90 seconds, maybe only 2 or 3 minutes apart. Requires real focus and a lot of support.
Wow. Okay, so stage 1 is all about getting the cervix ready. What's next?
Stage 2. This is the pushing and birth stage. Duration varies hugely, minutes to several hours.
Really? Hours?
Yeah. The average for a first-timer is maybe about an hour of pushing, but it can definitely be longer, especially, like you mentioned, with an epidural. This stage ends with the baby being born, which is, often described as just immense relief and emotion.
Incredible. And then there's a third stage even after that.
Yes, stage 3. It starts right after the baby arrives and ends when the placenta is delivered, usually just 5 or 10 minutes later.
Okay.
And the birthing partner might get chills or feel shaky then, just their body adjusting. So your role could be as simple as getting a warm blanket or maybe holding the baby while they recover, if they're ready for that.
So navigating these stages, especially at the hospital, what are some really concrete, active things the partner can do? The insights list several key actions.
Yeah, absolutely. One really critical role is being an advocate.
An advocate? How so?
Well, when someone's deep in labor, they might not be able to clearly say what they need or want or ask questions assertively.
Right, I can see that.
So the partner steps in, helps weigh medical options if they come up, asks staff questions for them, like, can we get an update? Or is it time to page the anesthesiologist? Or even just asking for a mirror so they can see their progress during pushing.
Yeah.
It's about communicating their wishes, maybe from the birth plan.
So don't be shy about talking to the medical team.
Not at all. The point is made that the staff, they expect it. They're there to help, to answer questions about procedures, progress, or even just, how can I help my partner right now? Silence isn't usually intentional withholding. They're just focused. They're used to partners asking.
Okay. What about helping her cope with the sheer intensity of it all, especially later on?
Yeah, that's huge. Your job is kind of being her anchor, her coach. Offer encouragement, reassurance. Suggest those coping techniques you practiced.
Like position changes.
Exactly. Help her try different positions, walking, leaning, sitting on a ball, and help her find a focus point during contractions. That could be her breathing, looking at your face, maybe even a foot rub if that helps. If she loses focus, gently guide her back. And during pushing, it's all about cheering her on.
And then right after the birth, any specific role mentioned there?
Yeah, it touches on supporting those immediate postpartum moments. If breastfeeding is the plan, you can help facilitate that first latch, make sure help is around if needed, like from a lactation consultant.
This all sounds incredibly intense. And, births don't always go exactly to plan, right?
Flexibility is definitely stressed. Birth plans are great for talking things through, but yeah, things can change. Labor takes its own course sometimes. So part of the partner's job is figuring out what is working in the moment, adapting, but always keeping the birthing person's well-being and wishes front and center.
And that brings up such a key point. What about the partner? It must be an emotional ride for them, too.
Oh, absolutely. And there's this piece of advice that seems so crucial for the partner's own sort of sanity. Don't take anything personally.
Oh. Why is that so important?
Because, well, the person in labor is going through something immense, physically and emotionally. They might withdraw, become irritable, maybe even snap. Their needs can shift dramatically. A massage feels great one minute, unbearable the next. Music was calming, now silence is essential.
So if she seems annoyed or pushes you away, it's not actually about you.
Exactly. It's the labor talking, the intensity. It's not a reflection on you or your support. And also, knowing your own limits is okay.
Limits? Like what?
Like maybe you plan to cut the cord, but in the moment you feel squeamish or overwhelmed, it's perfectly fine to say, you know what, maybe the nurse should do it.
Okay.
Or if seeing blood makes you feel faint, it's okay to look away briefly. The key thing is not feeling guilty about that. Your main job is that emotional support, so redirect your focus back to her face. Keep offering that encouragement.
Okay, let's try and wrap this up. Considering everything, the prep, the stages, advocating, helping focus, being flexible, managing your own emotions. What's the absolute core takeaway about the partner's role here?
It really seems to boil down to the power of just being there, presence, simply showing up, being consistently there. That's highlighted as one of the most important things. Even with all the medical staff around, your steady encouragement matters hugely.
And for the partner, dealing with their own nerves or fear while trying to be that calm rock.
The advice is manage your own stuff. Ask questions if you need clarity that can ease your anxiety. Learn, maybe from the classes, when not to worry unnecessarily, and consciously project calm, project confidence, even if you're churning inside a bit. Your role in that moment is supporter, and that calm presence is invaluable.
This has been a really fantastic deep dive. We've covered so much ground, the vital prep work, understanding the signs, the stages, the practical ways to actively support, like being an advocate, helping with coping, the need to be flexible, and navigating those intense emotions, both hers and yours. It really drives home that the partner is a documented source of strength.
Absolutely. It's a role demanding practical skills, sure, but also huge emotional intelligence, and ultimately, that simple, powerful act of just being steadfastly present.
So thinking about all these different hats the partner wears,
Right.
from timing contractions early on, to speaking up in the hospital, to being a focal point during pain, even knowing it's okay to look away yourself sometimes. What does this suggest to you about the sheer variety of strengths and types of support needed during such a profound life event? Something to definitely reflect on.